I noticed in the back of yours, there's a lot of good reference material. It's not in here either.
Right. Well, I mean, just as we're going along, we need to realize that, you know, as you're getting more and more knowledge on what these guys really did, they don't want the world to have access to this. I mean, if you think about it, these books we're messing with right now were never intended for us. In the chapter we're looking at, okay, we're in. Let's go where we really should be.
Yeah, that's what we should. We're never gonna do it in books.
2:12. Now, as you go
What's gonna
through
be
here,
next? What's our rush? What's gonna be next?
I want to get done before winter.
If you guys have Dropbox, I just save that version to Dropbox.
Just send it to my Casey.
okay, it says the solar cult followed lunar. We know that. It's been around. It says the solar cult and the eschatology lasted about 100,000 years. Exodes of different phases left Africa in different times. It went to Europe, Asia, Central America, South America, etc. You can see here, I'm in the 4th paragraph
What page?
on 2:12, the first page. It says the Incas, where the Incas traveled. So what's happening now is they're beginning to tell time by the sun as opposed to the moon or the stars. Their references are now all going to become solar. Okay, and in doing that, they're taking a lot of the old information. The difference being, when the new guys come, they always try to wipe out the old people's stuff and make it look like they're the good guys. They're the new kids on the block. So as long as we kind of remember some of those things, we're good. Okay, so solar cult traveled. They destroyed all the previous cult stuff, which is what I just said. And for the most part, if they couldn't get you to totally throw out your old system, they would adapt part of what they have into what you had into theirs. On 213, the first phase of solar cult was that of Tim. Now, brought on from the stellar and lunar cults under the name of Atum. Okay, see that? Now, that's what I'm saying. Don't get too hung up on it, because this stuff's all going to change at the end of the chapter to words that you're going to become familiar with. But if you remember, Tim is Horus at 12, and Tune is Horus at 30. That's the significance of those two words.
You mentioned that last week.
Okay, one is as a child, one is an adult. And Atum Ra, or Tum, see that? That's the L. That's the guy as the grown up. Because Atum Ra, or Amun Ra later, is going to be someone that you're going to be completely familiar with.
Are you saying Tum and Amun Ra are the same, just in different age groups?
See where? Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Atum.
Yeah.
Yep. And Tim is, yeah, and you can see it right there in that chapter. You know.
As Robert Farley is all the same things.
Are you in the first chapter on that page?
213.
Okay, the first phase of solar cult was that of, okay, brought on from the stellar and lunar under the name as the child and Tune,
As the father.
okay?
Yeah.
And later he becomes Osiris, which is, like I said, so don't get bogged down in the name changes. Just kind of remember who the character is. It's still Horus. Now, what begins to happen, though, a little further down in that chapter, the speaker here is Horus. See that in the middle of the page? And he begins to start being viewed in a human form. This is the first time any god has ever been actually physically pictured and talked about in the form of a human being. Everything else we've been doing prior to this, they were never humans. They never became human. Okay? Down in the paragraph that says, Tomb was the author of the saying and the ritual gave to Horus, the coming son. Later here, in the last thing you see, it says at 30, later it becomes Imhotep. See that I-U-E-M, Heptep? That later becomes what we have today as Imhotep. So that's important that you remember that, okay? Because keep in mind, we're at 100,000 years ago now, all right? Because Imhotep, when we get to contemporary times, becomes a serious big character in history, and we think he gets associated with being the first multi-genius in history. That's why it's important to note this right here, because if you were to look at Ray Hagen's site and some of the other people out there today, including some of my earlier writings, Imhotep would be associated with the second or third dynasty in history as we know it, and he would be the father of, or the guy who creates the architecture for the pyramid under Khufu. That's the story they sell us today. Okay? Which, if you see now that this Imhotep concept goes back to Horus 100,000 years ago, then you understand that what we've been sold today in most documents and by most of the scholars is not quite the same as the storyline that we've been given. And that's why it's important for us to realize that as they're developing all of this, which is now, look at the chapter on 214. Say the dual character of Tum as the father and Tim as the son, equal to Jesus, enables us to identify child Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas. See that? Okay, so you kind of see how they're taking this old stuff and now you can literally find it in your Bible today. We just need to understand where it actually came from. Okay. Okay. A little further down in the page, it talks about Hathor, and the word I-U-S-A-A-S later becomes the same lady or deity in female form that today is known as Isis. Okay. And at the bottom of the page, it talks about, again, what Horus is saying, and it's giving you how Horus is now blending into this story of Jesus. On 214, the second actual paragraph on the page, in his incarnation, Horus, everyone see that? Okay. I am the babe born as the connecting links twixt earth and heaven. So you can now begin to visualize that there's never been this direct connection between the heavens and the earth until now. Is that true?
He says, as to one who does not die the second death, in that paragraph.
Yep. Now, who do we know? Where do we hear that?
Resurrection.
We hear the resurrection.
Of who?
Jesus.
That's right. So you can see that this resurrection of Horus, when you get a little further down, it will be the resurrection of Osiris. And then it becomes the resurrection of Jesus. But you can see, what I'm trying to point out here is how far back this thing started before we get it all the way down here and think this is a new revelation.
Yeah, right here.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is not something that just began down here. This actually, on this chart, at AD is when Jesus, okay? And for 30 short years, he walks around doing his stuff. All right, so he's a real blip in time on this chart. But if you know that that same exact story actually originated back here, then, okay? And in my mind, what I tell people is, look, when someone takes over a country or a people, you keep the most educated learners. You get the people who are going to blend in and adapt and identify with what you're selling, and everybody else you eliminate. That's how wars go today. The Germans in World War II, the brainiacs of Germany, they brought to America and made them scientists for us.
America and some of the other.
Okay.
Share.
Yeah.
America, France.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And they took, all of the lower class. Hey,
Intelligence.
oops. Sorry. So, it goes right back to nothing's new under the sun. It's just a remake. Okay, the original legend, I'm at the second to the last paragraph on the page. The original legend of the suffering and descent of the Great Spirit on earth in the form of a man was during stellar cult. You see that? There can be no doubt of that, for the proof are the poles. Every time a pole star disappeared, it was a new deluge, right? That's the flood in our minds today, or the Noah concept. So it's really telling you, again, how old this is depicted as the poles and not on the cross. Everyone see and understand that? Is there any questions as to what that's saying, or everybody's good with that?
I think that next part of that, where you stop, where it says, as cult succeeded cult, the evolution of religion gradually assumed a higher type and was symbolized differently in each cult.
Exactly. The old wise men of Egypt never lost anything. They brought on all the originals and added to them. The difficulty has been to place the various portals in evolution in the correct order, which is very true. And that's what pretty much happens to us. That's why I'm saying right here, it says in the last phase, the Osiris, which is what I just said a couple minutes ago, Osiris becomes this god in the last stage before where we are as today. On 2:16, the elder Horus came to earth in the body of his humility.
Isn't that 2:16?
2:16, first paragraph. It is said of him, Horus, he was born, not begotten, who issued out of the silence as the Logos. He is called Haru in Egypt, which not only signifies the word, but also denotes as a victim doomed to be sacrificed, whether as the sufferer on the top or the cross, and bound to slaughter. He comes to earth as the one God in the form of a man. So here's the first time you actually see the concept of a God actually being equated or looked upon in a human form. Everything else before this point was all the images we've been looking at. Go to page 205 in your